When we become disconnected from ourselves, a sense of deserving to suffer begins. Hell is the suffering you think you deserve. When connections are repaired, we no longer believe we deserve punishment. We are back in the flow of life with all its healing properties.
And those marvelous words of wisdom was read by Deepak Chopra, author of the new book, Life After Death, The Burden of Proof. And as it has been in the past, Deepak, it is a great honor to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a privilege.
Every time I have you on the show, I feel like I am on my way. Thinking and speaking about death, it doesn't have to be morbid.
No, death is the creative leap of the soul when it wants to take old meanings and old contexts and then create new relationship, new meaning, new context, and incarnate to continue to evolve with its own soul through cosmic time.
And that's a process that we all have to go through in life as well, isn't it, to stay new?
Death is the way the universe recreates itself. At the quantum level, photons are born and die at the speed of light, which is 186,000 miles per second. At the atomic level, depending on where the atoms are, they die every few days to every few months. So your stomach cells die every 5 days, and so you can create new ones so you can digest food. Your skin cells die once a month so you can remain healthy and not feel like leather. Your DNA, which holds memories of millions of years of evolutionary time, it comes and goes every 6 weeks like migratory birds. The only cells that don't know how to die are cancer cells. Cancer is a vacation from death, and death is the ticket to life. If we succeeded through technology in conquering physical death, we would live in a mummified universe. There would be no freshness, there would be no beauty, there would be no joy, there would be no rhythm, there would be no music, there would be no recreation. It is through death that we recreate ourselves. And only those things that are impermanent have value. Would you rather have a fresh, beautiful rose or a plastic rose? Could you eat a plastic apple? The universe at all levels is renewing itself. And every time it renews itself, it improves itself a little bit. And once in a while, it takes a quantum leap of creativity into something that it had never imagined before. So, a 2-year-old dies so that the 3-year-old can emerge. The 3-year-old dies so that one day a teenager will emerge. The teenager dies so that one day a mature person will emerge. And an old person dies so that he can or she can download their karmic software in a more creative way through fresh experience. If we didn't die, we would be doomed to eternal senility. And the whole universe, as I said, would be like a museum. But fortunately, we do die. And it's something to celebrate. And it's something to look forward to when we have gotten in touch with that part of ourselves that doesn't die, that's constantly on a journey of evolution through cosmic time. If you died and you didn't recreate yourself, you'd be the one exception to every single phenomenon in the whole universe.
When we typically look at death, we do so with dread and remorse. Is there a process that you can suggest that would help us to shift our perspective and toward death so that it would be more creative for us?
I think you should look at any creative process, and the same thing applies to the whole experience of death. My father was 85, 86 when he died, and he died in meditation. He said, my time has come. I had a very good innings. He used to play cricket, and this was a glorious innings. And it's over, but I have no regrets. I'm looking forward to the next phase of my life. And he sent his love to everyone, and he closed his eyes, and he was gone. He died with that elegance with which he had lived. That can only happen if every moment of your life is one of conscious choice making. And those choices are evolutionary. Those choices in some way nurture the ecosystem, the web of life that we're all a part of. So, in my spiritual tradition, there are four ways: they are being, they are feeling, they are thinking, and they are doing. So, being is the yoga of meditation and stillness. Feeling is the yoga of love and compassion. Thinking is the yoga of understanding, intuition, inspiration, intention, imagination. And doing is called karma yoga, to do something that has no selfish motivation. If you can stay with those four fundamental activities of human existence, being, feeling, thinking, and doing, in those evolutionary ways, then you will never have to fear death.
I totally agree with you. It takes quite a commitment to... I can't imagine doing that in any other way except seriously meditating.
Yeah, but also that other aspects of meditation, what do I want? What's my contribution? Who are my heroes? What are my peak experiences? How do I express my unique talents and gifts for humanity? What are the best qualities I express in my personal relationships? What is the contribution I want to make to life?
All of that seems to fly in the face of what society seems to dictate to people, which is go, 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 don't stop, don't question, don't look within.
Well, that's a phase through which society goes through in its adolescence, and I think maybe our society is still going through the throes of puberty.
You talk somewhere in the book. You have a line, you have a line where you talk about consciousness as being the key to controlling the physical level.
Consciousness, which is our own awareness, which is our own spirit, which is our own soul, it differentiates simultaneously into cognition, which is thinking, into moods and emotions, which is feeling, into perception, which is what we call everyday reality, into biological function, into behavior, into social interactions, into personal relationships, into environment, and into the forces of nature. So ultimately, consciousness is the creator of all reality. It conceives, governs, constructs, and becomes everything that we call real.
How can someone become conscious of consciousness?
Through every practice that nurtures self-awareness, and that, of course, is going back to meditation.
The great poet Shelley wrote that the present is the graveyard of the past.
Yeah, the present reflects everything that has happened in the past. So the past is present in the present. And in that sense, the karma of our existence creates the situations and circumstances of our present life. But that doesn't mean that we live in a deterministic universe. It just means that even though the past determines the circumstances of the present, what we do with those circumstances is a matter of free will or choice.
Speaking with Deepak Chopra, author of the newest book in his series of great bestsellers, and I'm sure this is destined to be one, Life After Death, The Burden of Proof. When I first found out that you were writing, that you came out with a book about death, for some strange reason, the first thought that occurred to me was that maybe you had some intuitive sense that there was going to be some sort of cataclysmic, wholesale numbers of people dying. And
well, if you look at what's happening in our world at this moment, there are three possibilities. One possibility is that if we don't take any action and allow things to be as they are, which means continue the global warming as it's happening, which could, by the way, lead to whole countries disappearing in the next 10, 15 years, or radical poverty, or conflict, war, and terrorism, or human injustice in all its various forms. If we just totally ignore it, then I think the human species will be wiped out. Nature will not tolerate this anymore. Might be just saying human beings were a good experiment that didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one extreme end of the spectrum. The second end of the second scenario that many people are saying is possible is that there will be huge catastrophes, like the disappearance of places like coastal Florida, Bangladesh, and Egypt, which could cause millions, hundreds of millions of refugees and new diseases, epidemics, which would go global. So a large portion of the human race would be wiped out, but the remaining people would have then, gone through this crisis, completely have a paradigm shift and create a new world. So that's the second scenario, which is also quite frightening because, it's a high price to pay. But the third scenario is that we may be close to the tipping point where a critical mass of people might actually shift consciousness in the world. And none of that may happen.
Any indications of that?
Yeah, I have a foundation called Alliance for a New Humanity, and we are setting up global communities to just look in how a shift in consciousness can cause a shift in the world. And we're making a lot of progress, and we want to hope, we at least think we are moving in the direction of critical mass.
So each individual who makes that shift in consciousness is having an impact on the on the destiny of the world.
Each individual who makes a shift has an impact on the destiny of the world. But now what we're trying to do through our website, which is anhglobal.org, anhglobal.org, what we're trying to do is connect all these individuals with each other, and these communities with each other, and these non-profit organizations with each other, so that they can not only embark on a personal journey, but they can bring about a social transformation just through sharing stories, narratives, inspiring each other, connecting each other, and helping each other.
I had a friend, a very good friend, and we had a deep spiritual and philosophical connection. He died a little over a year ago, suddenly in a car crash. He was about 54 years old, and he was a theologian, and one of the levels that we shared on a lot was just talking about the deeper issues of life. And one of the things he did for me, and I really believe it happened, was he communicated to me through sort of twilight visions, and then just directly into my mind, he sort of gave me glimpses of his consciousness. And I got to see the ride he was on into the light. And I really felt that he was giving me that as a gift, as an acknowledgement of, like, I know this is what you're into, so here it is.
Yeah, well, that's well documented now. I mention all of that in my book. Mm-hmm. And, one can communicate with the consciousness of people who have passed on. One also can look at children who very clearly have memories of other lifetimes. We have now a theoretical model that explains that consciousness extends outside our biological organism and actually permeates all of space and time, that the real you're not the real person that you are is not this skin encapsulated ego, but an infinite consciousness that pervades all of space-time.
Well, when I had that experience, it was not so much the fact of his communicating, which was interesting, but it wasn't as profound as the experience itself, because I got to see that river, mm-hmm. that light that he was moving in. And about 7 or 8 months after that, I was doing a talk at a Unity Church, where I know you're going to be appearing while you're here in town. And I had I did a lot of meditating beforehand. I just felt this higher energy coming in. And I actually experienced myself knowing what it's like to lose myself and to become part of this infinite being. And it wasn't a sense of loss. It was like finally being set free from myself.
Right, yeah.
Can you relate to that?
Yeah, you never give up anything. You gain everything. By giving up your little self, you gain, everything that there is to gain. And that's the experience of unity consciousness. So, we have deep sleep, then we have dreams, then we have waking consciousness, then we have glimpsing of our souls, then we have cosmic consciousness, God consciousness, unity consciousness. Each of these stages is more expanded, and each of these stages there is a different reality, different biological functioning, different perception, different cognition.
It seems, to polarize this consciousness quest, it seems that there are two basic forces antagonistically engaged. One is all about fear based on scarcity and seeking ownership. The other one is about having faith in the infinite.
Yeah, more than faith, having the experience of the infinite through your own spiritual practice, having an understanding of the infinite. Anytime we feel inspired or enthusiastic or intuitive or creative or free, we are having a glimpse of the infinite consciousness.
You mentioned something else that totally fascinated me in the book because I was able to relate to it so well. You talk about the different levels of reality, getting into the subtle level when you go into those deeper levels of consciousness or after the end of this lifetime. And you mentioned that in the beginning of going into those subtle levels, one can be disoriented because you feel like you're not that grounded into the physical world, but you can learn how to work with that subtle level in a way that it can support you.
Yeah, but that subtle level we experience every day. We experience it in our dreams. We experience it in our creativity. We experience it when in our imagination we talk to other people or have relationship with other people. Yeah, we're experiencing that subtle world all the time.
How do we work with it in a way that it becomes supportive of us? How do we discover the way, how do we work with it for support?
I think you have to first have a clear vision of what you really want, and you have to have an image of what you really want. Then you have to have the quality of awareness, which allows you to give attention and intention and therefore energy to that vision. And for that, you need to go deep inside into your own silence. There's a process: intended outcome, information gathering, analysis, incubation, insight, inspiration, integration, implementation, incarnation. It's always like that.
And it's about letting, not identifying with the ego self.
Yeah, because the ego self is just a socially induced hallucination. It doesn't really exist.
It does seem like it's almost that these, when I see myself getting afraid or getting depressed or getting uptight, I can actually see a vision of this entity that looks just like me, and I can say, "You're not me." And I can sort of identify with just a sense of divinity instead.
Yeah, you can always ask yourself, who's feeling this? And just in the asking of that question, who's feeling this, you'll see that you're not feeling it. Your self-image is feeling it.
So where are you going to be going from here in your studies and your exploration of the higher levels of consciousness? Where do you go from life after death? Your newest book. I'm already getting you to talk about the next one.
I'm writing a book now called The Third Jesus. So it's the first Jesus is the Jesus of history, the historical Jesus. The second Jesus is the theological Jesus of Christianity, or what we call Christianity. And the third Jesus is Cosmic Christ.
Go on.
Well, you'll have to wait till the book comes. The third Jesus we can all relate to, even if you're not Christians.
I get it. All right.
It's the infinite consciousness that we can aspire to, that we can also have. We can have Christ consciousness.
What do we? What are your thoughts about the current state of intolerance among different factions, religious factions?
I think religions have become quarrelsome, divisive, and idiotic. And they're really making a mess of the world, the religious fundamentalists. We need to evolve to a new spirituality that takes the essence of all these religions, but at the same time respects what we know about reality from modern cosmology, from evolution, from biology, from astrophysics. Because, if you are to believe religions, God created the world in 7 days about 5,000 years ago, and we know that the planet is at least 13.8 billion years old, and our own Earth is at least 4 billion years old, and human beings have been around for 200,000 years. So, our new spirituality is to accommodate what we know about reality from all the wonderful scientific insights that we have.
Well, that's interesting because I did an interview recently with a mythologist, and we were talking about the relationship between science and myth. And at some point, they sort of converge that today's science can be looked at as a myth because, this great wise fellow by the name of Talbot Mundy back in the 1930s wrote a book called Ice Age Sunrise, and in it he talked about how you don't really know if your memories reflect a past or just reflect a dance of the imagination you're having right now.
But they're both the same thing. The past and the imagination right now, the same thing. Without the past, there's no imagination. The past is the raw material for our imagination. And I agree that mythology is the highest expression of the collective imagination and the collective memory and the collective karma and the collective longing. But even as we understand more about reality, even our mythologies have to evolve.
Right. So would you regard our current scientific view of the universe as just a phase in understanding that can be completely uprooted with a new insight?
Sure. Absolutely. Nothing is forever.
Today's truth is tomorrow's lie.
Yeah.
Someone listening to the show right now might be dealing with an issue of death, whether they're facing their own, whether they're dealing with a grave disease of their own, or with a family member. Maybe someone has just left, maybe someone is soon to go. What would you suggest to them?
There's so many things I could suggest to them. First of all, I think anybody could benefit with any spiritual practice that allows them to get in touch with the timeless inside them. But look at the data, look at all the work that has come in the last 30 years, from out-of-body experiences to near-death experiences to reincarnational memories to communication with departed souls, and understand how consciousness works. And it's consciousness which is the only reality. Everything else is a projected reality. So if you think there are heavens and hells and purgatories and all these different realms of existence, they're all equally projection of your own consciousness, just like Atlanta is a projection of your own consciousness.
Is loss a figment of imagination?
Well, nothing is lost, but something is always transformed. So what we experience as loss is actually a transformation. In many ways, it's a creative leap.
So it seems to me that death comes in to teach us how to face life.
Death is our ticket to life. Death is how we recreate ourselves. Through death, we create new realms of imagination and new realms of, therefore, manifestation. Ultimately, all is imagined, conceived, constructed, governed in our own consciousness, and from there it becomes reality.
So the true reality, so you said that everyone can benefit by getting in touch with the timelessness within them, and that's just about being still, closing your eyes and pay attention?
Yeah, or practicing something like mantra, or even repeating a phrase like "Thy will be done," or observing your breath, or just having awareness inside your body. If you do it long enough, your mind will go to a place of stillness where you will enter the discontinuity. And the discontinuity is the space between your thoughts that connects with infinite space.
Which is a moment of surrender.
It is a moment of surrender. Yeah.
So very quickly, in the last 20 seconds that we have for a reply, if someone says, I just don't seem to have time for the timeless, what would you say to them?
Then your experiences are going to be time-bound, and when you die, you're going to be very fearful.
We've been speaking with Deepak Chopra, author of Life After Death, The Burden of Proof, a fascinating read to help you to enrich your life. And Deepak, I know this book is available everywhere. If people want to find out more about your work, where do you
actually I have a blog, choprablog.com, choprablog.com,
CHOPRA
PRA blog,
blog.com.
and we carry this conversation there.